I know this video is definitely going to chafe some buttholes. In a past video, I talked about how shot timers are basically useless for preparing us for critical incidents. Well, one of the most popular things I've heard is people talking about using competition because it introduces stress into their performance. Well, the problem is that competition is not actually performance-based, it is actually outcome-based because it's all based on score. There is not actually a need to perform throughout other than either hitting or not hitting, and there's no decision throughout the process. You know exactly what you're going to do. Everything is decided for you. It's not really that hard to run through the competition. You might miss a target because your failure to analyze your environment, but that's very infinitesimal compared to reality. And when you have to basically respond to people's behavior, because in reality, you're going to have indicators, whether you realize them or not, or you see them or not, you're going to have indicators that's going to lead up to them. And I get that there's ambushes and everything, but then you're going to have your critical incident that's going to happen, and from there you're going to have to react to it, and the outcome is going to be determined by your reaction. But we can react here, and before this even happens. What you can't do in competition is actually simulate that. So they'll have things like, oh, put the knife down, whatever, blah, 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 blah. But you have to maybe keep your hands in a certain area. It has to be consistent. It has to be so watered down in order to be empirical so it could actually be measured. In real life, we can start getting indicators and start acting, right? We can start positioning ourselves further away. We can start maneuvering to where we're closer to cover. We might not actually need to move. We might actually decide to hunker down in place and engage targets. Now, in competition, you have a script that you follow. And some of them might be pretty loose, like, oh, you just got to take out all the targets, and stay within this lane and that lane, and, we'll only fire in this direction. Real world is not like that. You have threats that can maneuver around you, and they're going to be firing back. That's a whole different stress than being on a timer and having to perform. The only performance that you have to do is actually apply skills. You're still kind of just doing box training. You're still doing flat range training without the inclusion of the real OODA loop process. Now I know some people are saying, well, I shoot at targets that have guns on them or whatever. Not everybody that has a gun is a bad guy. Not everybody that has a knife is a bad guy. Not everybody that has their hands up is a good guy. And not everybody that's white or beige or red or yellow or green or whatever are all bad guys or good guys or whatever. We are typically working off indicators which are behavioral based. Now, we do that often, like when we're in traffic, we look at the behavior of vehicles while we're changing lanes and even pulling out onto a road or going through a stop sign based on the behavior of the vehicles that are on the road and around us. We pull cues, behavioral cues, and actions from our environment, interpret them in order for us to interact with that environment appropriately. Do we not? How is that happening in competition? You have something that is dead sterile, and you may have some targets that are moving or whatever that you have to do, plate racks that are going to spin around, but it's entirely predictable. Real life is not predictable. Then real life is not, here's the only area you can shoot. You have a 360-degree threat environment in combat, and as a police officer, as a civilian. And the sad thing is that a lot of people that come out of the military, they think that their skills are going to cross over. I'm sorry, but you learned how to work in a team setting. Unless you were part of a special mission unit where you operated alone, you're not going to have that understanding that you're your own security and that your tactics were based on you being a team player. And even if you were doing your own lone wolf thing, you typically either had somebody that you could call for backup, and you probably weren't going to be standing in front of a courtroom after every engagement that you did, and therefore trying to scrutinize, do I really want to spend 5 months in jail while I have somebody I don't know deciding whether I get to live a normal life or not? I mean, that stuff can happen, where you're under investigation, but everything's a little bit different, military, civilian, law enforcement, and stuff like that. So there's real stuff that you need to process, and competition is not going to serve that. And yeah, I got on a soapbox about stuff that's other than competition, but there's a lot of people in the military who have served in special units or whatever that say, well, I use competition to prepare for combat. No, you didn't, because your unit worked as a team, and competition is not really team-based, and you don't have random things that are happening in competition that prepared you for making decisions. You went through a workup. You went through scenario-based training that was using a lot of expensive resources in order to give you a good idea of what it's going to be like to respond to different stimuli, visual stimuli, not a beep that tells you to go because we're all starting from here. You might have worked on counter ambush or whatever, responding to ambushes, responding to contact and stuff. But typically, you'll have role players and you'll be able to notice indicators. And I know this because I've been through it myself. That's how I know that the training that you're doing in competition, it's not even close. So I don't like those excuses. It's like a failure to even think outside of what they were being told. Oh, competition's a really good preparation because it tests you under stress. Actually, scenario-based training that is chaotic and random is the best way to do it, but where you actually have a realistic environment and indicators that you can actually interpret and make decisions on is the best thing to do. And full stuff. And we're talking about outcome where it's not just the person drops and they're no longer a threat. What about afterwards, where we have to dial 911? We have to call, our carry insurance company and let them know what happened and let them know you're probably going to have bail money. And then interaction with law enforcement and surviving those first officers on scene and not getting shot by them because you were on dispatch and all they know is that there's somebody with a gun and shots were fired. So competition is not really replicating that, or is it? So, I would be careful on saying competition is really going to prepare for us. Yes, it can insert stress, and it can test your ability to apply skills under stress. However, that is very acute stress, okay? So let's be a little more realistic about what competition can do for us as far as training value. It does have training value. It does have an ability to look at our block training, our ability to handle malfunctions, reloads, and draw our ability to provide accuracy. However, it is very narrow, okay? And as far as like the criticality of that skill, it's less critical than our ability to interpret this part right here, in my opinion, because this is really what's going to determine our ability to unwrap those skills, so to speak, and apply those to the critical incident, and that will end up dictating this. Our ability to interpret this right here before this happens will dictate that, because we'll be able to decide and make a decision and pre-position ourselves accordingly. Again, of course, I know about ambushes and stuff that happens, but anyways, no matter really what scenario you're in, your ability to respond to this will dictate this. Okay, and competition can't really replicate that. It's a game. So anyways, if you like playing competition, that's on you. I like doing steel challenges in competition myself. However, again, very narrow window on applicable skill development. So anyways, I appreciate you guys watching. Let me know what you think about this in the comments below, and you guys have a good one.